What if I told you that time has a race?
What?
Hey, you!
What?
A race in the contemporary way that we understand race in the United States. Typically, we talk about race in terms of black and white issues. In the African American communities from which I come, we have a long-standing, multi-generational joke about what we call CP time, or colored people's time. Now, we no longer refer to African Americans as colored, but this long-standing joke about our perpetual lateness to church, to cookouts, to family events, and even to our own funerals remains. I personally am a stickler for time. It's almost as if my mother, when I was growing up, said, "We will not be those black people." So we typically arrive to events 30 minutes early. But today, I want to talk to you more about the political nature of time. For if time had a race, it would be white. White people own time.
And here we go. Last I checked, time wasn't owned by any particular race or people or person.
I know. Making such quote-unquote incendiary statements makes us uncomfortable.
That's because that's a racist statement.
Haven't we moved past the point where race really matters?
Apparently not, when we still have racist statements like yours being spewed out.
Isn't race a heavy-handed concept? Shouldn't we go ahead with our enlightened progressive selves and relegate useless concepts like race to the dustbins of history? How will we ever get over racism if we keep on talking about race?
Exactly. Go the Morgan Freeman route. Be colorblind.
Just about the moment that we were preparing to celebrate our post-racial future, our political conditions became the most racial they've been in the last 50 years. So today, I want to offer to you 3 observations about the past, the present, and the future of time as it relates to the combating of racism and white dominance. First, the past. Time has a history, and so do black people. But we treat time as though it is timeless, as though it has always been this way, as though it doesn't have a political history bound up with the plunder of indigenous lands, the genocide of indigenous people.
You mean the genocide that doesn't exist? Native Americans weren't murdered en masse. 90% of Native Americans died because of unintentional spread of disease, not murder.
And the stealing of Africans from their homeland.
They weren't stolen. They were sold to Europeans by other Africans. And the descendants benefit from that slavery today because they either wouldn't have been born or they would be living in Africa.
When white male European philosophers first thought to conceptualize time and history, one famously declared, "Africa is no historical part of the world."
Who cares what one scholar said from the 1800s?
He was essentially saying that Africans were people outside of history who had had no impact on time or the march of progress.
Which, technically, that's correct. Africans in Africa haven't really contributed much to progress.
This idea that black people have had no impact on history is one of the foundational ideas of white supremacy.
It's also one of the foundational ideas of reality. It's not that black people can't help progress society, it's just that they haven't. The ones that have progressed society nowadays live in Western countries. It has nothing to do with their race, it just has everything to do with their culture. Africans didn't care about progressing in technology like how Europeans cared about progressing in technology and learning more.
We don't have the luxury of letting go of the past. But sometimes our political conditions are so troubling that we don't know if we're living in the past or we're living in the present. Take, for instance, when Black Lives Matter protesters go out to protest unjust killings of black citizens by police.
Which is completely stupid because there isn't police brutality or unjust killings of black people by the police. These kinds of incidents are rare, and they almost never happen because of race.
The past won't let us go.
The past doesn't have a brain. The people who don't want to let go of the past are black people, and some white people who are idiots. Benevolent racism towards people of color is very small. Most of the benevolent racism is towards right-wing people of color or towards white people.
At present, I would argue that the racial struggles we are experiencing are clashes over time and space. Those in power dictate the pace of the workday. They dictate how much money our time is actually worth.
No, the market does.
And Professor George Lipsitz argues that white people even dictate the pace of social inclusion. They dictate how long it will actually take for minority groups to receive the rights that they have been fighting for.
They have all their rights, you dumb.
Since 2012, conservative state legislatures across the U.S. have ramped up attempts to roll back African American voting rights by passing restrictive voter ID laws.
See, now you're being the racist because you're assuming that black people can't get voter IDs.
And curtailing early voting opportunity.
Also not racist.
This past July, a federal court struck down North Carolina's voter ID law, saying it, quote, targeted African Americans with surgical precision.
Which again I say is retarded because voter IDs don't just target black people. It targets everyone. If you're going to say voter IDs are racist, then you're going to have to say driver's license are racist.
But another place that we see these time-space clashes is in gentrifying cities like Atlanta, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, New Orleans, and Washington, D.C., places that have had black populations for generations. But now, in the name of urban renewal and progress, these communities are pushed out in service of bringing them into the 21st century.
Oh dear God, gentrification is not racist, you dip.
Professor Sharon Holland asked, what happens when a person who exists in time meets someone who only occupies space? These racial struggles are battles over those who are perceived to be space takers and those who are perceived to be world makers. Those who control the flow and thrust of history are considered world makers who own and master time. In other words, white people.
No, it's people who actually want progress.
But when Hegel famously said that Africa was no historical part of the world, he implied that it was merely a voluminous landmass taking up space at the bottom of the globe. Africans were space takers. So today, white people continue to control the flow and thrust of history.
No, they don't, you dumb, stupid.
While too often treating black people as though we are merely taking up space to which we are not entitled.
Because you don't make anything. There are very few black people who do actual. It's not that they don't have the capability, it's that they don't want to. And it's even worse in Africa. There are black people who want to progress society and who actually do progress society. But because you guys have this victim culture and this idea that you're so oppressed, you do to improve yourselves. So instead of moving up in society, you stay at the bottom. And that's not white people's fault. That's your fault.
Shortened lifespan, according to zip code, is just one example of the ways that time and space cohere in an unjust manner in the lives of black people. Children who are born in New Orleans zip code 70124, which is 93% white, can expect to live a full 25 years longer than children born in New Orleans zip code 70112, which is 60% black.
And why might that be? I don't know. Maybe it's because blacks are disproportionately more obese than whites, and the fact that blacks commit more violent crime than whites. I'm done with this dumb broad. People like her are why the black community don't improve. People like her are why black people are in much higher rate of poverty than the rest of the country. People like her are why black people are committing swaths of violent crime. Get rid of this stupid victim culture you guys have. Otherwise, you're never gonna get past where you're at. That's it for today. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, share it, comment down below. Support my content if you really liked it, and I'll see y'all later.